What is up, brand builders? I am Angelique Bolding with Photify Business Director. And today I have Jack Monson, who is the guru of all things podcasting, as well as franchise news. So excited to dive into some interesting topics today around franchise trends and digital marketing. So Jack, I mean, you have a few different podcasts that you are the founder of. So I'm going to let you dive into that and share more about, your intro, what you love talking about, and some of your expertise in the industry.
Oh, great. Thank you. And thanks for having me on today. It's good to see you again here. And I'm so glad you're doing this podcast series because there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are a lot of podcasts coming out there. But it's always good when someone is sharing good content and having good conversations. So
Appreciate
congrats on launching this.
Learn from the best, right?
Right. And I've been doing this for a long time. I started in radio many, many years ago before I even got into franchising or marketing or before there was even such a thing as social media. But this podcast network that I have now is about 12 years old. I took it over completely about 4 years ago and really got into sort of expansion mode. So I'm now doing about 7 shows per week. 3 shows are my own, the Social Geek Radio show, the Franchise News podcast show, and a relatively new show called the Facebook Franchise Podcast with my friend Mike McDowell. We talk about what's happening with Facebook specifically for people in the franchise space. And we'll get into a little bit more of what we mean by the franchise space in a minute.
Sure.
But we also do some other shows that we're producing for some other people. The Women's Franchise Committee of IFA has a very cool show called Her Success, talking to female leaders of franchise systems. I'm also producing a very cool show called Mastermind Minutes with Gary Occhio-Grosso, and a new show coming up in franchising called Just Jana with Jana Bailey of FranNet. And she is just this dynamite character, really smart business leader in the franchise space. And that's about to launch in just a couple of weeks. So I'm really excited about that one. So yeah, franchising and podcasting is not going away. I think podcasting has a long life ahead of it. We're really just scratching the surface. We might get more into video podcasts, or maybe someday we'll be doing all of these podcasts on TikTok for all we know. But there's so much growth left out there for everyone to get into. And I know we'll get into this when we kind of start talking some tips and trends, but if you're thinking about doing a podcast, don't worry that there are so many other podcasts out there, because there are so many people who are looking for good content and looking for conversations. Absolutely, I recommend anybody think about starting a podcast, because you may find that you really love it, and the whatever business you're in, it might be a hit. You might really find some people who appreciate the content you're putting out. So I absolutely encourage anyone to check it out.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier too that a few weeks ago we had done a podcast just around sales enablement and how it's the shift now within thought leadership where, I mean, people are interested in what other people have to say. And with podcasting, if I'm sitting here getting some work done, I can listen to something in the background at least, or I'm taking a walk. It's a lot more digestible and accessible, I think, to so many people than video.
Yeah,
and it's something
absolutely.
that you can have on so many different streaming services. But I'm sure, like you found, maybe any other tips as far as it comes to sales enablement and what you've seen, a lot of people doing within that space.
Yeah, I recommend the audio podcast for especially for business leaders, because as I tell people all of the time, if you're talking about any part of business, I talk about franchising, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening to this right now. Those people are active, right?
Yes.
They're not someone who is sitting at home all day watching Netflix or, watching soap operas. Do they still have soap operas? I think they do.
I think so.
Or
I
watching,
think it's
even
reality
worse.
TV now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Watching reality TV, or even worse, watching cable news all day long.
Yes.
The audience for a business podcast is very active. These people are working out, they're jogging, they're walking dogs, they're traveling, right? I listen to most of the podcasts that I listen to while I'm walking through the airport or waiting to get on a flight or in flight. That's where your audience is. They're active people who are out there moving and working on their business and growing their business, especially, like you were talking about with a sales oriented podcast.
Yeah.
Salespeople are active by nature. If they're not traveling, if they're not working out, they're in their car somewhere, right?
Yes.
So the audio podcast is perfect for those folks.
I love that. So let's dive into some of the, outside of podcasting, other trends that you're seeing within franchise and digital marketing, especially, I don't want to say we're at the end of this pandemic. I think we're just still trying to figure out what the end of this looks like, what the new beginning looks like. I think you coined it best, the comeback of a lifetime, especially for
we've been talking
hashtag.
about that for almost I guess a year and a half now,
Yeah.
waiting for the comeback of a lifetime. And I think it's happening in the franchise space, especially. We've had a lot of events recently. I've been traveling nonstop for almost a year now. Conferences started coming back slowly, and franchise sales activities started coming back slowly, and now it's full bore. I was at a great event in Vegas about 3-4 weeks ago, the multi-unit franchising conference. It's a terrific event put on every year by a company called Franchise Update Media. And they actually had more people this year than they did in 2019.
Oh, wow.
And this is a 20-year-old event.
Everyone's hungry to get out of their houses.
You've got it, exactly. And this multi-unit show is very focused on multi-unit owners, people who are looking to grow their businesses and add additional locations. Maybe they own, two taco shops, but they're thinking about getting into some other line of business, whether it's food or maybe getting into professional services and buying a franchise to maybe sort of diversify their portfolio. Those people are looking to grow business. They're looking to get back into it. They're not going to stay home and watch Netflix anymore. They want to get out and grow their business, and they see an opportunity, where a lot of people are still staying at home and they want to kind of close off to the world until they get the all clear. And I'm here to tell you, there is no all clear.
Right.
We're never going to get the all clear. It's safe to come out from the bunker now. Right. Now you can go back to your job. We're never going to get that. There's always going to be a crisis. There will be another pandemic someday.
You're
right. There will be other, natural disasters. And I think the one thing, especially when it comes to marketing, the one thing that this pandemic and the lockdowns have taught us is we need to be ready. We need to be ready to do something different. And I won't use the word pivot because that's been overused so much for the past year and a half, but we need to be ready to shift to a different business model. If you're selling coffee in a coffee shop, you did really well if you quickly shifted to all drive-through or all delivery or all curbside. If you were doing something, one of my favorite brands in franchising is American Family Care. They shifted from in-person clinics and walk-ins to doing lots of telemedicine, talking to a doctor at that clinic on your phone or iPad. And they made that shift in a heartbeat, right? And the reason they made that shift, and the reason that coffee shops and food delivery places made that shift so quickly, is because they had been planning on these things for a long time. They're innovating in the background. A lot of very humble business leaders will say how lucky they were that they already had this new business model that they were ready to shift to. And I tell them, you weren't lucky, you were smart, because for the past 5 years, you've been innovating in the background.
You're right.
So I think we need to remember that there will be another disaster, another crisis, another need to shift your business model. It could be next year, it could be 5 years from now, but keep that innovation going in the background. What can you do to sort of fight off the next big threat that could be coming your way if you're a small business owner, or in the franchise space if you're part of a large system of other small business owners?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think at some points, it's good to know that they had these innovations ready. They were, kind of just waiting for the right opportunity. And, when something like this hit, it was necessity. So it didn't become just when is it a right time to roll it out? It's my business needs to survive. And in order to do so, this is how it's got to look. And I mean, we experienced that at Photify as well. And a lot of the partners that we work with too, our big message is put the power of your brand in the hands of your employees. And, we work with a lot of franchises and retailers, direct selling, et cetera. And it was great to see them start to say, okay, we need to allow our employees to communicate. We need to give them a portal that is allowing them to spread that message and deliver that to more and more and more people. But, sadly, it's like you also see some businesses that were so reluctant to making changes that, unfortunately, the mindset of how it's been done is how we should do it. And, it's just like they were the ones that had a harder time and struggled harder because they were resisting these resources. They were resisting change. So,
resisting change, and too worried about security, which I think we've all learned now there is no such thing as security.
oh
Right.
man,
We don't want to empower our employees or our franchisees and their employees because something could go wrong. Well, guess what? Something can go wrong anyway. And as you and I have talked, I love what you guys do at Photify, because compared to the brand's networks on social media, the real gold mine is in the networks of your employees and your field teams and your franchisees and the franchisees employees. Some person who's working at a pizza shop in Peoria probably has more social media connections than the corporate team back at HQ, right?
You got it.
And that's where the real power of this is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just those micro networks where, I mean, everyone has a platform to share to. Everyone has an opportunity to tell a story. I mean, even down to, I think about compliance when it comes to people that use our app too. We have sales teams that use our platform just to take a photo and make sure that their display cases look as they should. Or, I think I'm looking out the window of my office by my front door, and it's like every time I see an Amazon delivery, they turn back, snap a photo. So imagine how, not with that same business model, how you can elevate, an employee's voice that way. And I think there's something to be said about giving more trust to them as well, to create on behalf of the brand and share why they love what they do.
Right. Why would you not bring those people into the conversation?
Oh, you got it.
They
they work for you. They're your most valuable asset.
Yeah.
I don't want to call people an asset, but you know what I mean? Yeah.
Of course they are. They are the people who can grow your business better than you can.
You got it.
And I think, especially with franchising, because we're not just talking about employees who are out in the field. We're talking about someone who actually has some real skin in this game. They actually own that location.
Right.
They're just sort of renting your brand.
Correct.
And I think that's part of franchising that a lot of people don't understand, is you're basically licensing a brand, and you are a business owner. So if I'm the person who's letting you use that brand for a fee, I want that person out in Peoria. I don't know why I'm picking on Peoria.
Yeah, I was so like, that's an interesting spot
it's a city I like to pick on. But it's in my best interest to let that person grow their business the way that they see fit.
Right.
And of course, you want to have some rules and around, we're not going to change the logo to a different color, right? We're not going to change our tagline. We all need to be, kind of unified in all of the branding things. But
Mhm.
aside from that, let them grow their business. They
Yes.
know that market way better than I do.
Yeah.
So let them do it, and we'll all be better off.
Well, and think about, I mean, even just from my perspective and watching, my partners and how their networks have grown, but like the amount of uh, insight that you have and I guess just learnings and research that come about from seeing what your people create and how they talk about your brand.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I went through this practice with a friend just on like, personalities and how you think of yourself or how someone else thinks of you, your employee. Everyone will have a different perspective. And so it's really unique when you see these communities sharing on behalf of your brand, controlling the look and the messaging, but at the same time, what they say and how they shape it, I think is it's sometimes a missed potential if brands aren't looking at that as an opportunity. And with franchisees, same thing there too, is
Yeah.
they're stakeholders.
And listening to them, because it
Listening. Yes,
brand is not what you say you are. Your brand is what your customers say you are.
you got it.
And you can wish that away as much as possible, but it's always going to be true.
You absolutely, I'm writing that one down. That's absolutely true. On the topic of some digital marketing and content creation, what are some other areas that you think are really shining for franchisees? And I might throw in there too, last week we had a Facebook blackout.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
Instagram and WhatsApp. So some of these channels that we focus so hard in on, they could disappear one day.
They could. It's important to have something that you own and control, though
Mhm.
I'm not sure how you own and control anything right now. I mean, even your website can go down, right?
Yeah.
Or other places can go down. Your local brick and mortar shop can be closed if there's a hurricane, right? So everything is vulnerable. So maybe it's good to have your marketing assets spread out a little bit. So um, as far as Facebook and Instagram going down and WhatsApp and all of their other properties, I have a few conspiracy theories about that, which I don't want to share quite yet. But yes, it was down for basically an entire business day, and it was terrible for a lot of business owners.
Mhm.
At the same time, like I said, lots of other assets can go away for a day or two. So I wouldn't run away from Facebook and Instagram quite yet over that outage,
Fair.
or due to the political fallout of everything else that's going on with Facebook, and the very troubling
Whistleblower.
things we've heard about what's going on inside Facebook right now.
Right.
um, I'm sure we'll get that sorted out, and I hope we do, because for a lot of small business owners right now, it still is the best value in town. There are small businesses who absolutely depend on Facebook and Instagram as the only marketing place where they can really afford
Mhm.
to spend a few dollars and get a lot of business.
Yeah.
If you want to go back to television advertising, or God forbid print, you are going to pay a fortune and get no results. Sorry, print people, that's just how it is these
And
days.
you can't measure it.
Can't be measured. It's ineffective. The audience is dwindling every day,
Mhm.
as opposed to social media, where the audiences are shifting, but it's growing every day.
Mhm.
So um, I am still a huge supporter of using ad dollars in Facebook and Instagram, because you're not going to get a better buy. Even Google search is the prices are skyrocketing compared to what you're still
Highly
paying
competitive.
on Facebook's advertising network. So, we're still firmly behind advertising on Facebook, but at the same time, looking at what's next. And I
Yeah.
think, like I said earlier, all businesses need to be ready to shift to some other business model. My colleagues and I are ready to shift away from Facebook if we have to. you
Mhm.
know I mean, I don't think the government's going to shut them down, but who knows? I mean, we live in crazy times, right? So we're ready to shift to something else if we have to. So
Yeah.
that means exploring other channels. Um, right now, the number one thing I want every small business owner to explore, and a year ago it was the butt of a joke, but now it's serious, and that's TikTok. This is the
Okay.
fastest growing platform we've ever seen. It's just like Instagram was 8 years ago, coming out of nowhere. Everybody said it's only for kids. Forget
Hmm.
about it. There's never going to be a business use. And now look at Instagram, right? People can shop and buy and purchase right from Instagram. So explore TikTok, get familiar with it. I'm not recommending spending a ton of money on it right now. Like don't go into it thinking, okay, what's our ad budget for TikTok? Just explore it. Look at what some other small businesses are doing. Look at what other brands are doing. Look at what people are doing with paid influencers on TikTok. And remember that even though we think it's just for kids, the
Hmm.
fastest growing segments on TikTok are 40s and 50-year-olds, right?
Right.
I mean, it's exploding. And
Shocking.
yeah, Facebook was the same way. When I first got into social media, the Facebook was for college students only, right?
Hmm.
And now look at the age. Now we think of it as Facebook is for, old people, right? But, the people don't age out as much as some critics like to say. They age up, right?
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
that's happening with TikTok right now. And even those teenagers who started in on TikTok early, pretty soon they're going to be great customers for you, right? They're going to be, in and out of college, or they're going to be out in the workforce, or they're going to be looking to buy um, cars and condos and expensive things in the pretty near future. So explore TikTok, see what other brands are doing, and then keep an open mind to lots of other platforms that could come along. There will be another TikTok coming along in the next year or so. I don't know what
Right.
it is, but there will be another one.
Maybe not a Clubhouse seemed to have its shining few moments, but I feel
It
like
it
that phased
did.
out pretty quickly.
I have to tell you, I bailed out of Clubhouse not long ago. It
Yeah.
just, to me, I didn't see a business value behind it. And there were a lot of really interesting people that I heard from
Hmm.
on some of these Clubhouse rooms. Um, but wow, is it a time suck? You could spend all day listening to people who are pretty much just promoting themselves,
Right.
as opposed to going to LinkedIn or somewhere like that where you can scroll through, see what you want to see, listen to it, watch it,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're out. But
By
yeah,
that time you're committed, you're in it, and you're like, how did I get here?
yeah, and I also wonder, you see a Clubhouse room with a couple of dozen people, and it's like, how many of those people are actually paying attention?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Other than
No,
just,
they're multitasking. They're
mhm.
they're listening to Clubhouse, but they're looking at Instagram. Right.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I bailed on that pretty early. I don't know what else is coming, but as we mentioned earlier, I still see podcasting as having a huge future. The numbers are only growing. It doesn't look like we're not even plateauing at this point.
No.
Um, I think the biggest trend that I see, and something that I'm kind of on a soapbox right now talking about, especially in the franchising world, is local podcasts. We tend to think of podcasts as big global things from NPR or Joe Rogan
The 10.
or
Yeah.
or Adam Carolla, all of these people who have millions of listeners per week. I think the real future of podcasting is a local podcast produced by someone for their local audience. So let's say you own a landscaping company in Raleigh. You could do a podcast about lawn care and maintenance and so forth that's specific to that area,
Hmm.
which would be very different than if you did one for people in the Chicago area, right?
Yeah.
Because due to the different seasons, it's going to be very different. So think about local businesses getting behind some sort of podcast that positions them as a local expert, whether it's in lawn care or Italian food or coffee or, whatever is important to people in their community. And the goal here is to not be the next Joe Rogan and think you're going to have millions of listeners and
Yeah.
Spotify is going to send you a big check. The goal here is to not even have 1,000 listeners, right? Um, Seth Godin talks about the smallest viable audience, and that's where I think you want to start with any small business social media. What's the smallest viable audience I can target? So for my lawn care franchise in Raleigh, um, I don't need 1,000 listeners to this podcast. I need 12, right? If I can get to
Meaningful
12
people that are
people,
engaged.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if one of those people, 1 out of 12, becomes a customer of my lawn care service,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? That just paid for me producing a podcast for months, right? And then you get that 12 to 24 and then 48 and just try to grow it that way. And you may never crack 1,000, right?
Fair.
You may do a podcast constantly for 350 people, and that's
Mhm.
okay
Right.
because they're the right 350 people.
Exactly. And I think about how many opportunities there are to crowdsource content between, I'm just thinking about Nextdoor app and, having a
Mhm.
neighbor that had this experience and then getting on. And the nice thing about podcasting is it's not, I used to work in commercial production. I used to have this idea that everything had to be overly produced. It is pretty
Right.
dang easy
Yeah.
to put
Yeah.
together a podcast and react within that same day to this person's question or their problem or challenge, whatever it may be, and put meaningful content out there. So I love what you're
Absolutely.
saying in regards to, focus more on these micro communities and how you can really influence and, change or help them rather than trying to be the Joe Rogans of the world,
Right.
which is
Right.
it's very interesting. One thing I want to back up really quick that I thought, because I kind of have this challenging duo in my head of my thoughts are that it's not always a one size fits all community. So when it comes to, you mentioned TikTok, and I've seen that. I have friends that are literally like, I go to TikTok for my news. I'm into gardening. And, when you talk about aging up, it makes sense. I have friends of mine that are in their 40s and 50s that are like, they're on TikTok learning about business and learning about all these
Yeah.
different subjects. But when I go to the idea of that, sometimes when small business, you've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok. Twitch is another one that I feel like is starting to
Hmm.
make some movement. You got
Absolutely. Yeah.
Snapchat. How do you focus? Oh, and that doesn't include your website and your email list. So
Right.
how do you
Right.
how do you really weigh which channels to go after? Because I think for some audiences, it might not make sense to be on TikTok. So is it
Oh,
having
yeah.
a presence or is it constantly working every single one of these channels
I
daily?
think you have to work all of them to start and see what's working.
Okay.
And if you're a small business owner, you probably can't do it on your own. You're going to have to enlist some help
Yeah.
from maybe find an agency that could help you for a few months,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe find some friends or get your team involved. If you own a small business, let's say it's my landscaping business or your coffee shop in whatever city, um, there's probably some person on your team who would love for you to come down and say, could you do some TikTok videos for me? Are you kidding? If you're, making pizzas or brewing coffee or mowing lawns, for your boss to come down and say, could you, I'll pay for a few extra hours this week. Could you help me with some videos?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was that age, I would have jumped at it, right? So get your team involved. We talked about that earlier in the show about getting the team involved because they already have probably a better social media presence than you do. So get them involved and see what works. Try something on everything: Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat. Definitely LinkedIn, especially if you're a B2B type brand. Twitter, I've given up on Twitter. That's a whole another topic we can talk about. Unless you want to argue politics, don't
Yeah.
even worry about Twitter right now. But
Or if
try
Facebook and
everything.
Instagram were down and then, Twitter had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
shining day.
Suddenly
That was their
Twitter is like,
moment.
yeah, well, look who's back.
Yes.
Um, but if you try a little something on everything, see what sparked a little engagement, right?
Mhm.
And don't give up right away. And I think also, and this is another trend that we'll probably have to end on this trend, but the reality for Facebook and Instagram right now, and probably some of the others, is it is pay to play.
Yes.
You're going to have to spend some dollars. If you're not spending a few ad dollars on Facebook and Instagram, you're really not on Facebook and Instagram as a business anyway. So, bite the bullet on that, figure out a little bit of an ad budget. If you're a small business in basically a small to mid-sized market, you're going to have to spend $300 in a month to really get enough people to see it, because the algorithms are not going in our favor these days, right? So if you're just putting out purely organic content on Facebook right now, you're lucky if 1% of your followers even see it.
You're
And those
right.
followers might not be the customers you really want to get to. So you're going to have to target some people in
Mhm.
your local market to come check out your business. And the good news is targeting works really well, and you don't have to spend a fortune, but
Mhm.
drop $300 over the time frame of 30 days and see how it does. If you do that for a few months and it's not working, then let's figure out something else. But my guess is you will see it working, and then you can plan on, okay, Instagram works, maybe Facebook isn't working for my brand, so let's focus on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or TikTok seems to be doing something, Snapchat did nothing for us, so let's focus on TikTok. So that's really it's all experiment. We always talk about A/B testing.
Yep.
It's really ABCDEFG testing, and see what's working and feed it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. Everything it's trial and error. You have to see, really where your audience goes to. And, I've even seen people that spend, day in and day out on Instagram, and then they make one TikTok video and all of a sudden they have 2 million views.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
it's like, it's kind of like, oh man, for the effort I put into Instagram and for
Right.
this to just hit like that,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
But TikTok right now is where Facebook was, 9 years ago,
Yeah.
where your followers would see 100% of your content, right? You'd put
True.
out one post and everybody, all 500 people who were following your page would see it.
Yes.
The golden era, as we call it. I mean, those days are gone. So
Good old
on
days.
Facebook, you're going to have to spend some money. Instagram, it's more and more becoming that way. And someday TikTok will be the same way. So
Exactly.
that's why I'm recommending checking it out now, because you can still kind of get in on the on what could be called the golden era of TikTok right now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I like that. I like that a lot. And kind of to not end on that note, but we're running out of some time here. I want to make sure that people know where to find you and know how to listen to your podcast. So where can we direct people to? I mean, you've got a few podcasts going,
Yeah,
but a lot of really insightful information. So where do we go?
yeah. The podcasts are all living on all of the places wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple or Google Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or wherever. So just search for Social Geek Radio there. And then everything is also at socialgeekradio.com. And you can find me on all of the usual channels too. I'm pretty easy to find, and would love to chat with anybody if you've got any questions about any of the stuff we talked about today.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, this has been, as always, Jack, I appreciate you giving us your time and sharing your insights also. Appreciate you. And, to next time, let us know how we can support you, how I can support you, and excited to share this with our followers and kind of get some insight on, their feedback and what they think too.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. We'll talk soon.